you know, keep
Since
everyone
we're all
on their
here,
toes.
I will call to order the Tuesday, November 13th meeting of the Albany Arts Committee. Do I have to do roll call now, Eva? It says roll call on my agenda.
No, we've never done roll call.
Okay.
Yeah,
Call to order.
recognize each other. What were we talking about?
So the first order of business is the approval of minutes from the October meeting. Anybody who's had a chance to review this have a motion to make?
I have a question about the description of the mural project. It wasn't clear to me, and I'm sorry I don't have it up in front of me now, but if we all look at it, it didn't seem to indicate that there was a request for, not the mural project, the other project, the creek project, that there was a request for an increase in budget.
We did not increase the budget. We kept it at 15,000 and just had 2 locations instead of 3.
Oh, okay, but it also seemed, I thought that there was not gonna be the flowers and animals in it.
You said you could do it.
You said we could.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I remember
Yeah,
wrong.
no,
Right,
that's okay.
Any other questions about the minutes?
Nope. I move that we, okay, the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, is there anybody who would like to address the committee on any item that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Announcements, staff announcements?
Sure, let's see. Oh, I have an announcement. You don't have a microphone in front of you. And that is because we have a very fancy microphone right here that is picking up all of your words. So please remember to project. It is a pretty good microphone, and also if you do end up speaking, we ask you to project too so we can get it all on the microphone. Let's see. Thank you to everyone who attended the committee appreciation event. For those who couldn't make it, I dropped off some awards, so you are officially appreciated. And let's see, for Creek Art, I also wanted to update the committee that I met with the Public Works Director and Transportation Manager. We walked the 2 sites. I have a meeting with, excuse me, I just forgot her name, Friends of Five Creek, Susan Schwartz. Susan Schwartz. Early next week to really figure out the locations of each site, each creek, and after Thanksgiving, the artist and the artist and the Public Works Director and I will have a conference call to iron out some of the construction. It's a construction project, so this construction details, so that Public Works feels very confident in the proposed plan, because it was pretty general. What he proposed as far as what his safety plan was and the closure plan, and some things changed. So hopefully I'll have an update at the December meeting.
Can I ask if you have any update, Eva? We had discussed at the last meeting the question of, and I think previously, the question of whether Art and Public Places Fund money could be used for performing arts projects, and we had asked about getting the city attorney to update us on that.
Yeah, so mostly I talked to Isabel and we kind of went back and forth and looked through the master plan. Our interpretation of the definition of what the master plan, or excuse me, the fund should be used for is actual art in public places. So because committees don't do events, it's a gray area in the sense that if you kind of what the committee has been talking about, it has a feel of events, that it's a one-time thing and then it's over. So really what the council has, their direction has been to have actual physical artwork. So we're hence in the PAPP, there's in the work plan, there is murals, there are community projects, there are sculpture loan, there are very tangible items. So that's my feedback from Isabel in our conversation and looking at the master plan. I'd be happy to take more comments and feedback on that, but from the council, her interpretation, because she's been with the Arts Committee for so much longer, was that the council's direction really was, I'm not saying it properly, but the physical artwork.
Visual art.
Visual art, thank you. Visual art rather than, one-time events, and also that, we want to also create a legacy of the Arts Committee, that there's these lasting pieces throughout Albany. The Albany Greenway projects are a perfect example of that.
Can you clarify if that is pertaining to the sort of will of the council and the master plan, or if that relates to the ordinance itself? Because I think that was the question, is whether the ordinance limited what we could do, or whether it was the way that the sense that that's how the council would like to do it, and that's what the master plan says.
As I interpreted it, it was both. That the council's interpretation of the ordinance was to create physical artwork, visual arts in Albany.
I'd like to say that I feel like the Fall into Haiku is an event. It is not a permanent visual installation. And so I'd like to in our next going forward, and I think maybe there weren't people in the Arts Council or on the council who were representing the performing arts when that ordinance was implemented for the last budget. I'd like to revisit that with people, and at the very least get a budget for events around installation of new art or whatever, you know what I mean? But I really feel strongly that it's important that we include ephemeral works of art, whether they're theater productions or dance productions or music productions, things that are not visual and permanent in the ground set, and stating that we know that the haiku event is not one of those things.
Okay, since we're in the announcement section right now, I just wanted to get all we can do is get an update from staff right now, but I think we have a need to fix the next agenda to make sure we have an opportunity to talk about this. We were going to try to do that this month and we didn't quite get there.
Sure, and I'll give everyone just page, well, I have 2 page numbers here, but there's the matrix in the master plan that you can kind of look at as far as the different media. So it does talk about the types of work that, or types of art that are defined, and it says sculpture, flat work, tile, mural, glass, or media arts, and those are defined in the master plan as well. So yes, I agree. We can put it on the agenda and we can go into more detail.
I think we need to talk about it, because that language is old, and it was written in a particular context, so I think it's great to revisit that whole question.
Yeah, thank you for the update, and let's make sure we got it on the agenda. Any other staff announcements or updates?
No.
Okay, any committee member announcements?
I just wanted to share the video with the public, and I hope we can make it part of the public record. The 3-minute video of our September Bulb Fest Dance Festival, which is also what we're planning to do on May 5th, which is another announcement, which is that Love the Bulb is going to present an even bigger and better dance and art festival at the Bulb. And I'd like to welcome everyone to suggest performing artists and visual artists as well who might want to participate. And so I think if you take a look at this short video, that may give you an idea of what we're planning to do.
And Susan did send me the link, and it was going to work, and then it did not. So I apologize because the computer's not here. He's working on getting it. So if he brings it back and we can get onto the internet, we'll play it again. But everyone did receive it. So if you haven't already, take a peek at that.
Okay, so we will interrupt ourselves for 3 minutes if and when the computer comes back able to play the video for us.
I apologize. This is why we don't do meetings away from City Hall.
Any other committee member announcements? Okay. So we do have a presentation. I just want to put this in context, the proposed sites for large-scale projects. So when we created the Arts Committee has what's called a public art projects plan, which goes along with our work plan and guides us over a 2-year period. It sort of names what projects we're working on in terms of public art, and then we and staff sort of see all those projects through to completion, and we amend that plan every 2 years. We make a new plan actually every 2 years with whatever the projects are that we're going to be working on. A lot of us know that there's a community projects section of the public art process where we can make these small allocations to community projects that are not in the prime sites for public art in Albany as identified in the master plan. But we wanted it, but that excludes then community members who are coming to us with ideas that have larger budgets or would be at sites that would be require a panel of citizens to review it and the more in-depth public art review process. So we decided that we would agendize every November an opportunity for community members to come and talk to us about proposed ideas for larger scale projects. So there isn't anything that we are voting on with this item tonight, but if there are people here who would like to talk with us about ideas that they have, that puts those ideas in front of us and makes us aware of them so that when we create our PAPP, which is coming up here fairly soon, right, we will have these ideas in front of us and we'll know about these things. That's the intent of this being on the agenda. So that said, is there anybody who would like to talk with us about large scale project, a larger scale project?
There is.
All right, great.
Come on up.
There is, and one who's been wanting to do it for about a year. So did you do this last November, or is this the first?
This is the first time we've sort of, yeah, so.
And Carol, I'll remind you to project if you can.
And you might have to wave your hand
Okay.
every once in a while, because it's not my
Sure.
usual,
Sure.
although I teach, but one-on-one. So, my name is Carol Fitzgerald, and I've lived in Albany since 1973, and have always, from almost the first month that I moved in here, became very aware of Albany Hill as a park and as a place that a group called Friends of Albany Hill were passionate about. And so in 1991, I served on the master plan for Albany Hill, and then spearheaded volunteers from then on doing native plant preservation, in which we won urban grants and really got involved and worked with different people from UC Berkeley that had knowledge. And so I really got into the native plant area. So what I want to do, there is a block-long retaining wall that the city owns that extends from Castro Street, to where Hillside and Jackson come together. And so that is the wall that we'd like to claim. I have met with the Jackson Street neighbors, live across from it. Actually, I met with them a year ago and showed them the plan that I had. And tonight it's pretty much ready to go. So I do have visuals that I like to put up now. They are a little small, so I know suggest I put them here, but I can also set them up there. Do you have to stay? Can they not walk?
No, we can walk.
We're
good at walking. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that it's almost easier for you to come because I have pictures of the wall now, and then what I'd like it to look like. So I think if we kind of walk over there, there's probably not too many of us who see things. So let me just reverse and set it up on this side. So that we can see this. Okay, so this is the old city steps that Castro comes right at that sign that this is the area. And to the south of that is all the belongs to the school district, and the city owns this retaining wall here. And so of that wall, now the neighbors would like the back, they would like the whole thing painted the same color, so it will be the background color. But the actual part that I'm going to, that I need to do the work that we want to put on the mural will start this zone, which is right here, and it goes right to the very end. We won't paint on this one because it's only about a foot. At that point, it's only about high magic, and this has been projects we've done before. So, so this gives you an idea of how it will look And so the project is to do botanical paintings, and so it's like an herbarium. And I've used many of the actual, this for instance, this whole composition. Barbara Erder, who is now retired, but she was the botanist at UC Berkeley, and she had kept the plant list years before we started doing the storage of work. But she hadn't done the press plan, so while the days that we came up with the restoration work, she gathered a plant pressing. So when I saw her compositions, it was stunning. I mean, she was so artistic the way she did it. So I asked if I could use some of her compositions, including some of my own. And she was thrilled. It gets it out. These press specimens are all at the Jepson. Herbarium, right. And they're generously letting me steal them for a while to do. So I have everything all ready to go. And so the first, so I'm dividing them in panels. And so the first panel that I'll paint on will be this one, because this will be for the names and any kind of documentation that you have to have for public art. So this actually wall here is going to have all the shrubs. And there's a total of natives, these are all going to be the native, so combining all the sections, there are 132 actual botanical paintings.
132 what?
There's actually 132 native plants. And so the first section, which will be the shrubs, there are 17 native shrubs. And the next section will be the native grasses. There are 23 native grasses. Wildflowers will take up 3 of the panels. It's wildflowers and herbaceous plants. And there's 3 panels. And there's a total of 85 of those. And then the trees, I know Eliza loves the trees. Eliza lives across from Jackson Street. She's one of the neighbors. And we did another project together. So there'll be there's 8 native trees, and then there are 8 ferns.
Oh, that's lovely.
And so when we get to where it's not very high, that's where the ferns will be, and the trees, because, yeah. So that is the plan for the layout and the individual things. So
And
these
are they going to be kind of like these drawings? They're going to be
absolutely
samples of
like
them.
this.
Yeah.
These samples that I have done, the second component is this is going to be a community art project. I'm going to do the projection, the drawings, but everybody's going to paint with me, but only 5 or 6 at a time. And so I'll have, like every Friday, I'll have this kind of thing. That's in '96. Mitch was on the Salado Avenue Association. He's now my neighbor, but we did 150 paintings on the street banners. We did it here I did them with the community. They were just a hit, and they hung up every spring for
10, 20 years, right?
No, I think they kept them up around 7 or 8 years. What started to happen is that, and this was families painted them with me, so the children who are maybe 6 to 8, I think maybe I had it, anyway, but I sort of had a limit because they were too young. They had to handle the pellets, but they painted with families like in the evening, but when the kids who were maybe 6, when they grew up and we started seeing these paintings, and little kids, their name was bigger than their arm. And that was okay. Because we're defined, and they got in the arts. And so it was time to retire, but they lasted. It was so sweet. And then I also did that project with the city of San Pablo when they had their 75th anniversary. And so it's just so much fun. And I teach at City College, adults, but it's who I am besides being an artist. So, so I have a lot of the drawings which you can certainly look through, but so what I'll be doing is the way I project is this, I will outline these on the paper that's the size. This is gonna be the size of each. So it looks very small here, but each one of these is going to be this size projection. So what I do is trace around it, then tape it up to the section, and then you just make a hole and then you do a little dot with a marker on it, a little bit of paint. And then it's like a connect the dot. So the drawing will be done by me, and it'll be prepared before the people, well, actually, this part, the blow will be done, but people will actually make the little holes themselves. And then I will have these within a sleeve, but they need to follow the colors because we do want it to be pretty accurate as far as mechanical.
Are you, pardon me, but this is amazing, are you going to include all the text? Okay.
Because it's a
Because it's
really
instructive.
instructive.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have the botanical name and then the common name. And then on some of them, Barbara actually put their location. I won't look to do that because you don't always want everybody to know exactly where someone is. And then, at the same time that we were doing this restoration work, there was a resident in Kensington, Robert Langston, who was another doctorate and very studious and known by all of that society. And so he started keeping a list. Well, Jerry KALB, he's retired, but he's still at the Essex Museum. Robert Langston and he worked, and they have a whole list of all the moths. And butterflies are up there. So what Robert did then is he would find the host plant, and he wouldn't let us pull, even if it was nominated, we could not pull it out until his caterpillars were finished. And then he's passed away. He worked with us till he was 90. So what I'm going to do is, or what I've already done in some of the drawings, whichever one of these plants is a host plant or butterfly, I'm going to be adding both the caterpillar and the butterfly.
I see one right there.
And so did I, yeah, okay, so that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to be an educational learning thing for the neighborhood and community. So, and then so this is this. Now, what I also want to do, and the reason my budget went up from the first draft into when I presented to some of the neighborhood, is that I want to have on each one of the panels, I want to have one of these. For instance, this is the giant red trillium, so that will be in the wildflower section. Let's see, it's panel 5, so it's going to, anyway, it's there. So to me, it's like a focus point, and because many of these are going to be the plant when it's there, it's been pressed. There's still quite a bit of color in a plant that's muted, even after 20 years, whatever, and I guess how here is that it's so, if anodic air doesn't get it to them. But I'd like to have, these are paintings that I have done in watercolor. And so this is one, this is a giant red trillium. And so I found that there's a company in Santa Rosa, KBO Industries, that can take my image and actually put it on. This is porcelain steel, so it can be outdoors and totally permanent. And so I'd like to have one. I have 5 of them, so this will be California copies are here. The blue white grass is here. This one is just some dry grasses, but one of the ladies of the butterflies is going to be on. This one in the shrubs. Can you imagine what shrub I'm going to feature? It's the poison oak, because if you have been to Albany, it's there. And I have a hummingbird. So that's kind of a brilliant red. So they gave me this as a sample. They just sent it to me this week, and it was a little bit kind of thinking I can't use this because I'm thinking this is so shiny against the acrylic, which is a little, I don't know, it did not look so good to me. But I talked.
They don't have a matte variety.
Well, so so I called them today, and they got perfect color. I mean, it's as perfect as a copy can be, but they really did a good job. But I thought it would be a little deeper, and so I talked to them today, and they said that I can have a frame around this, and there are a couple of metals. One is it Corten steel? Is that, I can't remember exactly.
Corten steel,
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a steel that looks like it's rusty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
They,
Corten.
and so on their website, I just went over it with them about an hour ago, 2 different metal frames that could go around this, and that will break up. So there's a transition from the acrylic to the shine, so I think it's gonna work. Because if I go up and paint each one of these, they're, you know, very, very detailed and get in acrylic, it's just more time consuming, and this is gonna take long enough as it is. So I think I'll go ahead with it, once I saw the 2 different choices. One is say it again, Thunder?
Corten.
When I see things in your
Corten steel.
Okay, so there's a project in Yosemite that is on their website that I can see that frame, and then the other metal is on a site in Albany that is called Sanctuary something or other. But anyway, there's precedence for the other sheets. So that's.
And there'll be 5 of those?
There are 5 because one on each one of the panels, the
Wow.
shrubs, the grasses, yeah. And they'll bolt it in, and they won't. Well, this is real flat. The frame would come out a little bit because. Are you familiar? Have any of you walked Jackson Street?
I walk this all the time. I'm just curious what the surface is. Is it ready to be painted on, or what preparation?
It'll be washed. It'll be cleaned and.
Is it smooth?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a few little cracks. David, the farmer, is going to do. You know, he's a painter. This is he's our bird man. He does all the birds on all the ones. And so, and David is a painter, house painter, and public ministries, and so he'll do the priming. So anyway, there's a few places where there's small cracks, and he thought that the wall was in pretty good condition, but we can just use that's pasty, that cement you get in the jar that's already mixed, to fill it in because they're not deep and they're not wide, but we'll fix that. And I have done 2 murals before. I do teach at City College, and one of the students was on the sonnet in Grove, and then I helped another muralist do her mural, which is on the front of the Italian's campus right there. So the paints that I use them for the banners for Solano and Santiago. It's Nova Color. It's a company in LA, and it's what all of the muralists use at least in California. It's industrial acrylic, so it has a lot of pigment in it, and it lasts forever. We have those banners out. I still have a couple of mine hanging on my back porch where I live on Madison and Solano. So it's very, it's made to be in the sun. How the advantage here, though, is that we are facing, this wall faces the east, so it's not going to get the sun that a south wall is. And the mural that I did with my students, we did in 2012. And one of the sites that I teach in City College, part of the time in the community, is in the Mission, and the first director there, Ray Potland, is a muralist, and I'm very much in contact with Pasita New York, which just is a go-to place. I mean, you can call them for advice and information, and they just are thrilled to just give you all the time and the information. And that's where I'll get to do the graffiti covering too, which of course we'll put on when we're all finished. So that's that. I guess I should say a little bit about the timeline.
Well,
Or do you
does
want
anybody
me
have
to?
any other questions while we're looking at the pictures?
This is a retaining wall, you said it's owned by the city?
It's their property.
It's their
Yeah.
property.
Right.
What's on the other side?
Well-
It's their property.
It's like those.
Oh, this is Hillside Avenue, which comes down and meets Jackson. And this is a very steep slope. A few years ago, Carol O'Keefe and a few others on Jackson Street, and then Albany Community Foundation, together they planted up here, and they did some native planting, but it was just too steep for them to keep up, so it's kind of just grasses, but there's still.
But nothing's gonna happen up there for a good long time.
No. And then the other thing that I was concerned first, if it was possible, is that normally you don't paint a mural on a retaining wall because it can get moisture. But the city doesn't water it. And so it's, and also we have such a long dry season, so I've checked that through to see, I talked to a number of them, and they're not concerned. And the paint that's on here is just the gray, and if somebody graffitis, the city just puts a little patch of another gray. And I watched that, and nothing is peeled, so I feel very confident that it's
What do you think your background color, have you?
Well, okay, so I was originally going to go with kind of a soft green. But then when I showed it to Liza and the neighborhood, they sort of wanted more of an ochre color. What I don't want is a checkerboard look. I want this whole thing to be one color.
Mm-hmm.
So like the grasses, some of the ones that, many of these plants, for instance, this one, they would probably look better on green because of the contrast. But the sidewalk alongside that runs right along here, it's not a normal sidewalk. It's probably, what do you think, maybe? Yeah, I mean, it's enough for one person to walk, and it'll be enough for us to have these, the ladders and do, but it's not. So people are going to have to walk over and really look at things, although they're going to be size, but something to me. But I think they're going to want to do that. It's kind of like something you're going to want to study. So I think we'll stay with. So this is a yellow ochre, so that's the plan.
And this is your layout, kind of mock-up?
Well, this, for me, a lot of this idea, but it'll also be, it's just that it's a little larger. So these are the shrubs, and this is the mock-up that will be made out of this material here. And this is all the grass. I'll tell you, the grasses thing is fascinating to me because I thought it might be a little kind of boring to be dry grasses. When after I did this, it's like all the little heads were so different that it's just fascinating. And so, and also the reason this one's on green is because I wasn't settled on the background color. The neighbors had gave into it.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to come back and sit down if we don't have any more questions about the pictures.
I have a suggestion or suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
My roommate thought it might be a good idea, if possible, to include maybe some designs of the Native Americans that lived in the area.
Well, it would be nice.
Just along that, just very small.
Eliza, here's the thought. I mean, this is kind of what I can do, but this wall here, these sections here, although I'll paint them so there's unity the whole thing, I'm not painting anything on that. So I'm thinking that another artist at another time might want to take that on because, of course...
Which area are you talking about?
The wall from here to here is not going to have this.
Oh,
I'm only going to do the part... I'm doing this many panels because that's all I need. But I am going to make the background color and I'm going to cover it with graffiti so that color is there. But there's a couple of things. I think another artist could do something there, or maybe when this is done, like I'm not featuring the monarch butterfly, which is so important out there. But it's on the eucalyptus, which is non-native, but it's there. It's where the monarch's there, so it needs to be there. So we might at some time feature one of these, to have the butterflies and moths, or the birds, the wonderful birds there, and somebody to see me notice it's just a long-eared, do you think it's a long-eared omelet? It's in her backyard, she lives up at, hard to tell, but I've only seen great horn, but so there's wonderful birds up there. But these old stairs, the stairways in the city that somebody's done design, what I want to say, mosaic on them. I think they would be fabulous if somebody did a project and had mosaics come up. Those wonderful steps. So I don't know how this area got mixed in the general plan.
Okay. So,
I'm trying to change that.
so maybe that can back up to our seats here.
But you're doing the trees.
I'm just doing the native plants and trees and plant and native vegetation.
So. So your idea of how much this would cost to do this project is approximately how much? Is even, here you go.
Yes, I'm here.
So did you get that, Noon? I did email you the budget and
I just got your resume.
the resume I just sent this evening. Okay, but Jim, I sent this yesterday because you said you wanted it new.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But, yeah, so I didn't bring you enough copies, so I just had the one.
Okay.
But, so anyway, the budget is 22,660.
So the possibility of what the Arts Committee could do when we create the public art project plan, PAPP, is to put a project in this location on the plan and to say that we intended to spend X amount of money out of Art and Public Places Fund to pursue that project. There is a process in the master plan, which you might have seen, which would then, we can't allocate, where we can't request from city council to allocate that much money without there being a panel process, which means that then RFP has to go out and you would bring all of this sort of proposal information to a panel who we would select from their resumes, and then if there were other proposals in that location, those would also have to be considered as part of the public process. Is that correct, Eva?
Yeah, all of that, and then part of that process is community feedback as well, so probably.
So all of
would be
these folks
displayed.
would have an opportunity to potentially weigh in.
It would be displayed in the community center for 60 days, I think it is.
Right. So it's a whole process.
Well, I'm aware of that, because I had come to Eva when you had the project hearings and maybe for small projects, but I wouldn't even, obviously it's not going to be done for 2,000. And so she suggested I come back at this time. I have done public art before for the city of Denver. I have a piece there. And so I do know the process, and
Awesome.
I can handle it.
Great, I just want to make sure everybody understands that, so that it's absolutely terrific. Thank you so much for this presentation and for sharing all this careful thinking that you've done with the community about the project. If we pick this up, we have this process then that has to be followed, so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. Are there other questions about the project from anybody on the committee that you would feel you would need to know before we could talk about this when we do the plan?
For the site.
I'm curious if funding is difficult or not completely available. Do you have any ideas of sponsors or donation mechanisms that might make it
I
more
have
difficult?
several, because when I went to the smaller projects meeting, I had planned to raise some money to go with it, and the thing is that they couldn't go over it, the project couldn't be over 10,000. So number one, I've already been to and shown the project to the Albany the Albany Community Foundation, and they are very interested, but their grants are around 2,000, and they don't usually go over that. And so I also had thought, I was around when the library was built, the little bricks were put out front with people's names, and I think they did a $100 donation to get those things. So I had thought that if I needed to raise some money, that I don't know how it works when it becomes one of your public art projects that are funded by the city, but certainly I could get sponsors if you'd like to sponsor the native trees, that would be a certain amount of money, and that if we bring in that kind of sponsorship from the community, which is certainly possible, then we need to have we need to have a section where we could actually have people's names, which could be done. So I think that that could be done.
So if this committee decided that we wanted this project to happen and we put this on our plan as something that we were potentially going to support, or a project like this, because again, we would not be in a position to guarantee that this exact project would happen this way because a panel would have to decide and citizens would have to weigh in and everything. But if we did that, you're saying that we might not need to allocate 22,000, there might be other sources of funding that you know of that are interested in this project.
Providing it was a large enough amount, so that, because I'm going to be putting in a lot of time outreach to get the people involved. And so, of course, anytime you're fundraising, it's a little bit, but you know, it's a small town, and people really are interested in things like that, so.
Does your budget include all the priming and the
Yeah, I'm sorry that you don't have it. So here's the budget we're going to do. The artist fee will be 11,000. The project expenses, the paints are 3,600. The gesso's 250. That's the primer. The sheer coat graffiti covering is going to be 375. And then those porcelain steel images are 1,200 each, so that'd be 6,000. But with the frame, they might be 100 or so extra. So that could go up to 7,000. But I think I could absorb that. The miscellaneous, which is brushes, drop cloths, that kind of thing, paint containers, etc., is $600. Carpenter's installation fee, and this is kind of just an estimate at $500 because I'm not exactly sure if it'd be that much or how much. Apparently, just many contractors are familiar with how you bolt and weight, and I had them done at City College by our carpentry building and grounds, and so I don't know for sure what that price is. The water pressure cleaning is, I think it's about $300 because we'll be renting a cleaner, that's part of preparation of the gesso cleaner. The water pressure.
Did you talk to the city about the integrity of the wall itself? Are they the city confident that
Oh, right, yeah.
lasts, like, I don't know what the projected
I
lifetime.
have it to the most recent Public Works, but when Tony was our
Wilcott.
our urban forester, he felt it was. He actually was part of the group and helped in those that did the, I told you they did the planting above it on that steep area, so he kind of looked into the wall.
What do you think the lifespan of this project would be?
Well, murals last, forever. The paint on the wall that I've done with the students has been up since 2012. We haven't even had a graffiti, but I just think the students put so much love into it.
So I understand that there's drainage holes in the wall itself, meaning that the hillside does get flooded, I guess, at times.
We should be so lucky.
Yeah,
Shouldn't we, to get
I just wonder if the wall is any kind of an issue as far as cracking or crumbling or being pushed and being distorted in some way. I know
I'd
it's
certainly be
not
happy to
supposed to
check
do that.
with them again, there's new people in public works, but
Well, we could also ask if
Yeah,
the committee
that
decides
would
that
be
we
part
want
of the
to
thing
support
we
a mural
talked
on this
about.
location,
We'll
we could also ask the
get
committee.
more
I think that would be one of the things we'd investigate.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody about this idea, about the proposal?
It's great. It looks
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you very much. Our process, when do we do the next PAPP?
Starting as early as next month or January.
Yeah, and we send it in the spring, is that right?
Yeah, April.
Yeah, so there would not be any news from us before the spring, and what would happen if, like I said, if we proposed that we wanted to support a botanical mural on this site, is that then an RFP would go out and you would need to propose this to the panel that was considering that. And to make it clear, the way that process works, other people could also propose botanical murals on this site. The way our process works, we can't select an artist and a project at this budget level and approve it inside this committee. It has to go through this big public process.
And one of the reasons that I've been so thorough, first of all, is the time that I didn't want to work under pressure, so I've done all this work, a gamble, is that you have to think about that the painting outdoor season is roughly April through October, and you don't get as much done in July and August because of the fog. You can't paint on as much during the year. And the way I see my timeline right now, I would love to be able to start in April with the preparation and start the actual painting in May. And it's gonna run over to the next spring and maybe a couple of months before it's finished. So my thought is it's gonna, if we were to be able to start it in April, then it would be the following, 1st of July would be my deadline to complete it. But it won't be left next winter weird, because we're gonna start in the middle and paint panels out so that it doesn't look lopsided for the carryover.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can do anything about the time frame, just keeping that in mind that,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Our
Yeah.
time frame though would be that we would have to recommend it to the council, they would have to say, do it, and then there would have to be this whole process of
And there's a
consideration and
2
approval. It
Yeah.
takes a while.
It takes a while, but and again, the PAPP wouldn't even start till June. It's a June through
Yeah, so
for
we
a
wouldn't be
2-year
talking
program.
about something that our fund would be able to fund, I don't think that soon, right?
No, definitely not this year.
So it looked like it might not.
I'm sorry, definitely not
So then
2019.
it's more like it's gonna start 2020.
That would be the,
spring.
if that's your
Because of the
timeline,
weather.
that would be the earliest, yeah, if it got accepted.
Either if the,
Well, we might,
if a resident is asking to create something on public property that we are not funding, has that been done? Do you understand what I'm asking, if it isn't a matter of fundraising?
Say, I didn't.
If she were able to fully fund it, you mean?
Yes.
On her own, just the city giving permission to have this happen?
It's a good question. I don't know, I know it's come up in the Arts Committee before that there was a mural that was proposed that didn't go through City Council. I don't know. I don't know the process of that, but my hunch is that there needs to be, that you propose a site and then there has to be a vetting process, but
No, that never happened.
it didn't. Okay, something. What was the
I think
memorial?
what you're talking about is someone came to us with a proposal and we were interested in.
Oh, this was the
making-
teen center.
It was
Yeah.
a teen
Yeah.
center thing, and we were interested in
Yeah.
having that happen, and that all fell apart because we didn't have a process and
Yeah, it
But the
looked like
city
there
would-
was
there was-
a single artist who was getting.
getting, and
Right.
so because we needed to have a process set up, and so.
what I had heard from Michelle Mason is that someone had come, the group that does the garden in Memorial Park, they had an artist who drew up
That's right,
plans.
yeah.
And they came to City Council, and Michelle on the council, they decided that it had to go through the arts. There was a process that they needed to go through the arts committee and before it came to City Council. And that artist, I mean, they just dropped it. They didn't.
Well, it's a little
as
more
far as I can
involved in that,
complicate.
but.
Oh, okay, so I didn't
Yeah.
get those.
So anyway, our
Yeah.
timeline is that our PAPP would start, and this would not be something that would be we could make happen in the spring.
So it maybe could happen though before the end of the painting season, which would be October. I mean, if say it happened in August.
I would doubt it. I would doubt
We
it.
might, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah, as Jen was saying, that there's,
Yeah.
it gets approved in June, we only meet once a month. So then there's a process of putting out the RFP. It's out for 30 days, 60 days, depending, 90 days, I think we've done before. Then we have to form a selection panel. I wouldn't say that it would be
Okay.
this project, if the site was approved, would even, yeah.
So so what happens in January? You have to have something ready for, that's,
We create a plan of projects that the Arts Committee want to allocate funds from the Art and Public Places Fund towards. So if we said, remember that project, we saw that was really great, it seemed like it had a lot of community support, we want to support that. What we could say is, we're putting this in our plan and we want to start the process of creating a public art piece on this site. That plan, that whole thing doesn't really, first of all, City Council has to look at all of our lists, not just that, but everything, and say, yes, that's good, Arts Committee, go do those things. That happens in probably like April. And then the plan actually starts, takes effect in June, is what Eva is saying. But somewhere between the City Council voting June, somewhere in there, that would be the soonest that we could really start the process of saying, okay, put out a RFP. That would mean that you, and as I said, anybody else who wanted to apply would be able to create a proposal for whatever we said the project was, a botanical mural on this wall. Then we would at the same time we would select a panel of people who have expertise in murals and public art and things like that. They would send us their resumes and their CVs. We would select 5 of them or some number of them. Then they would meet and review the proposals that came in. And then there's a period of public comment where everything goes, usually it's put in the lobby over here and residents can look at it and make comments. And then it comes back to the Arts Committee. We have to approve it finally and say, yes, it's approved. And then it goes to City Council. They have to approve it. And then it can happen. So that process is very long. And that's what I want to make sure everybody understands, that if we pick this up as a project, it isn't something that will happen quickly. We're not in a position to say, great, it's beautiful. I'm saying that, I think it's beautiful. But we're not in a position to say, it's great, go start it in a few months. It's a long process with this committee of being able to allocate those funds and improve the project.
Well, it is what it is, because needless to say, if there was any other way to do it. I mean, I've had several city council members already look at the project, but they, of course, everybody's following the process. And
But
so
thank you, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for sharing so much of your detailed work with us. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's fun. We'll know what's happening.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so we can leave.
You don't need to stay or go. You don't need to stay if you don't want to.
It's only gonna get
We're
worse.
moving on.
We're willing indeed.
Okay.
That's the quota minute.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here. So we're moving on to item 6.1, community projects. We're going to talk about mural locations for the community project mural.
Come on up to our podium. Yeah. Thank you for being here again. We keep changing the meeting location and time and day.
I sometimes feel you're testing us.
Oh, we are, and you're passing.
I think she's testing us.
Yeah. These holidays.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us again.
Yes, thank you.
It's kind of exciting to see, ideas and projects. It's kind of fun, so I appreciate it. So we pursued some of the sites, and we're back to the beginning because we discovered that, so when we had talked to the people from the Ivy Room, one of the partners was kind of excited, and then I think one of the other partners thought the mural was inside, so it was kind of miscommunication. And then turns out that we contacted the owner, and I think it's been a while, so I can't remember all the names. But it turns out that one of them, the property is divided in 2. So it's the half bottom and the half up. And one of them do not want a mural. So that side it's up. And then the people from Nori, the next to they did not respond again. So we were really here to just propose our first site and see if we could move forward with that one. I mean, it's what we have. I do like it. He was hoping to have a different site, but I do like it a lot. And I do like the idea of the double, mural. I think it can give it a whole.
This is the one on the corner across from the beer plant?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is hot in these days.
Yeah, a lot.
Can I ask a question? There is a mural on one of the walls, is that correct? So you're painting over that mural? And where is that? Do you know anything about the provenance of that?
Yeah, she did it.
Oh, you did that one?
Are you willing to paint over it?
Yeah.
Okay. He was kind of excited to paint over it.
And Camina, nothing, you didn't get in touch with the Supercuts or the Santa Fe?
That I did not get a contact for. And that I did. Yeah.
Yeah, Supergut isn't there anymore. It's Renee's.
Yeah.
So
But you weren't able to reach out to them?
No, I didn't get to contact them.
Okay.
Yes,
because that could still be an option if anyone has Renee's.
Really?
No, it's a great location. But,
I mean, from the last meeting, it sounded like that was.
I thought you had said in the past that you had spoken to.
I did speak to her, and she was non-committal. So she didn't say yes, she didn't say no. But this was a couple of years ago.
For the purposes of this mural though, that can always be a potential site, but they're ready to go on this site.
I mean, I have no problem with taking that to city council. Does anybody else have a comment on this? Anybody have a problem with that location? I think
That's
it's,
the location of the,
yeah, I mean,
is it an animal hospital?
Yeah, it's the animal hospital and then, yeah, Dana Mayers.
The only question I had about that site was the second wall. I understand the first wall is right on the corner, very
Yes.
visible. The second wall is kind of tucked back behind the building. Who's going to be able to see that and from where?
Well, you can see the half of the mural you're gonna see from São Paulo. You know, if you go in a car or just walking from São Paulo, you can see the wall.
pieces.
Yeah.
It's not really visible.
Although the driveway is wide enough
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
It's like a
Okay.
canyon.
And also from Castro Street, you can see
When
the
you're
other
coming
side.
down, right.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
He actually became you know, when they had all this Pokemon thing going? It was
Oh,
a Pokemon
yeah.
site.
Yeah.
It was a Pokemon site. I think because there was something on it, right? There was something to distinguish the wall. So, and the people from the beer garden, I mean, definitely see it. So there's a lot more traffic now and music because we live right there.
And it's great to have it there.
Yeah.
All right. We already approved the site we already voted to approve the project on that location, and we were just waiting to see if a different location that you all were more, wanted to propose came up. So we don't need to vote again on this.
You think we approved that location? I thought we approved the project and we were waiting on the location. That was my understanding.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Then I would entertain a motion to approve this location and ask City Council to let us present this project to them.
I still move that we approve this location and this project at this location.
And what is the location?
And it's
Corner of Castro and
Yeah,
São Paulo.
It's on the letter. We have
I just need it
the
for the
address on
motion.
yeah, Castro Street in São Paulo.
Okay.
So it's the corner of.
Castro and São Paulo.
Okay.
I second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And Eva, will you let us know when we can talk to City Council about this?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So the next step in this process is we need to get that final approval from City Council before you all can press on.
Is there anything, thank you so much, is there anything we have to do right now?
No, I think you have a pretty good presentation. At the time that when we take it to City Council, we're going to want to show them the pictures and have you describe the process. If you have been working on the list of groups that you want to talk to for the stereotyping, that would be interesting, I'm sure, to them. You had mentioned a couple of them when you presented it to us, so.
Okay, and I think, was it you? One of you had a list that we're going to provide.
I have some to give you.
Yeah, if you would give us, then
I've been collecting them from people.
I could contact them before the meetings if you want.
No, I don't think you need
Okay.
to. I think it's fine just to know. I think what the City Council will be in, because we don't want you to do work when we don't can't allocate the funds to you. But I think that the City Council will be interested to know who it is you need to talk to and work with in doing the project.
Okay.
Does this have to be noticed to any of the people in the
Yeah.
300 feet or
Yeah.
so?
Yeah. Definitely.
When
notice.
does that happen? Is that before
The-
council?
No. No. I think the council has to approve it.
The City
then-
Council has to approve the money.
Yeah.
If the City Council approves the money, then you go into the part of doing the project, which includes all of the public notification and all that.
Okay.
Right. And there may be additional, as later on our agenda, notification processes based on what happened.
But the most important thing, the next step is for the City Council to approve the money, because we don't want the artist to do anything else until the money is approved by the
Sure.
City Council.
So,
Alright, so we will wait for you to contact us to say this is the day we're meeting, and
Yes.
we show up with props.
Yeah.
And
Similar to what you had before
Great.
was great.
So we will do that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
if you have any questions, because it does take sometimes a while to get on City Council's agenda, just ask Eva. She will know what's going on.
I have a question. We are waiting for the money to start this project, right? Is any idea if this can happen when the school time is on? Like in the school time?
Yeah, it won't take forever. I mean, it takes a little while. I think, are you worried about the,
Well, the important people who is gonna work in this project are kids, school kids, you know?
I mean, some of them.
Some of them.
I mean, it shouldn't take
It should
that
take
long.
that long.
I,
No, once it's approved, I mean, what we would do is enter into a contract, so, and then, and you would, in the contract, there would be, payment details of, you know, how much up front and how much at the end, based on your needs. Obviously, there's a lot up front and supplies,
Yeah.
and then, yeah,
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it won't be.
by next, after the torrential rain stop, fingers crossed.
Just a quick related question, are they gonna need to reach out to the schools and classes and organize this with teachers? Because if so, then you need lead time so that that can be integrated into whatever lesson planning or curricular alignments you might need.
Well, school is one part, but it can also be community organizations that we were talking about, like parents that have been organized in terms of some of their needs. So we'll approach them. So
Okay, I just wanted to keep that in
Yeah.
mind, that there's council approval is one item, and then also for the logistical
Yeah.
purposes, that's.
yeah, and it can be a couple of interventions, or the teachers invited their students to a conversation, not necessarily throw them totally off their curriculum. As a teacher, I'll be mindful of that. So,
Okay, thank
thank
you very
you
much.
so much.
Good night.
thank you.
Okay, item 6.2, public art notification process. So Eva, you put this on the agenda, so maybe you can introduce us to what this is about.
Sure. So based on our experience with the Albany Loop, which is essentially Arts Committee and the city's first art construction project, construction being the main or the key word there, that it, I think we went in a little blind in stepping back, hindsight's 2020, but if we would have worked with Public Works a little bit in more detail, there would have been a little bit, a lot more that we would have identified that could have been done before rather than doing after. And likewise, the notification process outlined in the master plan is pretty vague to none. In the sense that I don't think the postcards within 500 feet is even in there. We've just done that out of courtesy, and they do that for other construction projects. They do that, so we just kind of mirrored that. But with the community meetings that Jen and Peter both went to, it became clear that people miss the postcard. So some things that came out of it were posting at the site. So we post it here at the community center as our way of doing our due diligence. Obviously, not every neighbor comes to the community center. We have it on our agenda, we have it on city council, but having it at the physical site with images of what it would, renderings of what it would look like. Some other things came out of that community meeting too.
Having a day when, there and you have a demonstration, all the neighbors come and someone is there to explain it to everybody on the site.
So there's a date,
yeah.
right. So there are a few different things that the city is open to. However, there's not a process, and like Jen and Peter worked on before with the community projects, if you create a process and put it in the master plan, that it takes a lot of work. This one I don't think would be nearly as much work, but just to make a process of the notification so that we have it in our master plan and we follow it and we can refer to it if community members are upset.
How, since this is on the agenda, how did that work out with those neighbors? Are they mollified in any way?
Yes and no.
Nobody's ever
Yes and no. The city has agreed to do some fast-growing plants, kind of along. I'm blanking on the street. Portland.
Yeah.
Portland. So that it would block the view for some neighbors and some of the more disgruntled neighbors. Yeah. So we're moving forward.
That was my next question. They haven't made any progress on it in ages. What's happening?
What's happening with the loop?
Yeah.
The quick update is that they realized, I may have mentioned this, that they couldn't mow the grass by it, and there was risk of dinging it, and they couldn't get under. So they had to figure out and research different no-mow grass. So Public Works got involved and they're working with the contractor as far as that goes. So, yeah. Things that Arts Committee didn't think of, right?
So
No.
this agenda item is to nominate a subcommittee of 2 or could be more people to write this public art notification process that would become part of the public art process in the master plan.
Mm-hmm. And something to also
anyone want to campaign for this job?
something also to consider too that's come up as we're doing this mural project, as we're doing specifically the sculpture loan program too, is do we have to go through this every time we have a new sculpture? Seems like that would be separate. Just some things to think about for the committee and whoever is on the subcommittee as well.
Just a thought. For the loan to own kind of thing, those are not permanent things.
Correct.
Do we have to go through this
Well,
in order
that's-
to do that?
That's what will be in the process. And maybe that's the difference. It's permanence versus not.
Versus,
Yeah, probably everything's up for discussion.
Yeah.
You decide how far you want to take.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just do.
Ask for forgiveness.
This is
And ask
kind of
for
a cover
forgiveness
your
later,
ass
yes.
situation, right? This is like just create a process so that we can tell people we have a process and we followed it, because
No, it's actually to create a process so people will actually know about it. Because in point of fact, we had a process and we did follow it. They got
Yeah.
postcards that had pictures of the art on it, but they didn't notice them.
They did not,
And so, and it's a
People
problem
won't.
because, well, the
Some
idea is
people
to
won't.
make our best faith effort to improve that
Sure.
process. Well, first of all, that's what we can do as the Arts Committee, is we can rewrite the process to try to say, okay, what could we do within reason that we think would be noticed. You know, I actually asked the neighbors, what should we do? And they said, give us a flyer. And I said, well, with respect, we gave you a postcard and you didn't notice it. So that doesn't seem to me that a flyer versus a postcard is going to be that different. And then somebody said, we'll put up a sign. And that actually seemed like a reasonable suggestion, that maybe if a project is coming to an area with houses within a certain distance, and I don't think it's really relevant if there's no housing within a certain distance, then I kind of feel that the process of having it in the public space and on wherever it goes on the website is basically all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's visible from people's houses, then it seems reasonable to put a sign there. Maybe that is the process. Maybe there isn't a lot more to it than that. I'm not sure. But the idea is to get a couple people to brainstorm, okay, what would it really take, since they didn't notice a postcard, what would it really take so that people would notice it? Not necessarily to, my understanding actually, Isabel told me, and you could clarify this if this is not correct, but Isabel told me that she asked somebody who does a lot of public art, who has some legal knowledge, what the obligation of the city is to notice residents, and they said there's zero obligation. It's your land, you can put anything on it you want, with, more or less, so that if you followed the process for approving the project, you don't have to notice people at all. So it's not a legal thing. It's a community. We all want everybody as much. I mean, everybody's not all going to like the same thing,
Right.
but we want people to at least feel that they had an opportunity to weigh in and that things don't surprise them, especially in their own neighborhood.
I get that, and I also want to say that people think when they weigh in that it's going to make a difference, and so are we offering something a way to weigh in when it's not going to make a difference?
No, it has to be during the point in the process where it will make a difference.
But we have plenty of
it could
notifications.
make a difference.
But I know, but in the
Right.
library, for example, in the comment period in the library, we got a lot of negative feedback about it, but we still went ahead with the project.
because
got
most of
more
it, we got more
I get
positive.
that, I get that, but I think the people who have negative feedback about it have an expectation that their negative feedback will be listened to and responded to.
But I mean, some negative feedback might. I mean, if it's just someone who's grumpy, doesn't like anything, it's one thing, but
Hard to
some
tell.
of us can,
That's
people
hard to
can.
tell,
But
Right, that's
it's
why
like
it counts.
I think we spent a lot of time talking about the color of the
We
leaf
did.
because there
We did.
were a lot of strong feelings about the color. So I mean, I think it's helpful for the reasons that Jen was saying, it's very helpful to have things. Someone might spot something that nobody
Right.
noticed.
The grass, somebody might have spotted the grass.
I read
Yeah,
all of
no,
those
nobody
comments.
did.
I read all of the comments from the library, from the foyer very carefully, and I counted them very carefully. And there were way more positive than negative. Had there been more negative than positive, I explained to residents, I don't see my position on this committee to say, like, I like that project, let's approve it. I see my my position to say, hey, there's a lot more positive feedback than negative feedback. It seems like from what our information gathering process that some people don't like it, but a lot of people do like it and think it's cool and that it'll be fun and that it would be a good addition. So I think if the neighbors were notified in a way that it caught their attention and they came here and said, we really, really don't want this, I think they would be listened to. I don't know that the decision will go their way, but I think that they would be listened to.
But I think it's naive to assume that no matter what you do, that we were at fault for just doing a postcard, because you can do a postcard, you can do a flyer, you can stand on your head on the street corner and try to engage people. And if people don't want to pay attention, they don't pay attention, and it's impossible.
I absolutely don't disagree with that.
And
I still think,
but to feel that we are responsible because we didn't make enough of an effort.
I'm sorry,
that's absurd.
I'm not saying that. I certainly don't intend to say, and if that's what you heard, I must have misspoken. I don't think that we are to blame for anything. But as Eva said, this is our first go-around at doing this type of a project in a neighborhood close to people's homes. And the feedback we got from those people's homes is that they were surprised by the project and didn't know anything about it. And while completely agreeing that you can do lots of different things and people won't take notice anyway, I don't think there's anything wrong with some kind of common sense revision to say, like, put a sign up in the area where the project's ready. Maybe that's the change. I don't know that it's
I think that is the change that would make a difference. If putting up a sign will make a difference, if anybody will actually pay attention to a sign. But I think it gives us a clearer way to say, we put a sign there, this is what it was going to look like, fine. But I just...
So what we need is a paragraph or a page that describes all the steps we will take, that are in addition to the process that we already have.
I'd like to raise
It's little to none in here already, so it's creating a process.
That's creating a page.
It's creating
The
a
process
process of
we followed this time
notification.
was that the staff basically came up with a process that, and I think, you know, the members of this committee change a lot. I know for my part, I wasn't even aware that that was the first time we were doing this, or that there was not a process that, and it seemed like that's the process we always do.
Right.
So, and that's, y'all are very professional and competent, so it's like, great, okay, we do that. So I think it's just spelling it out so that everybody knows when a project like this is happening, here's what we do to try to make sure that people close to, because see, the people close to the project also, they can't be on the selection committee because there's a rule that you can't live within a certain distance to be on the selection committee. But they are very close to the project, and so, you know, it's just coming up with the best way we can to make sure that those people aren't taken by surprise. Can't make everybody like things. You can't, you know, the only way to have nobody come complain is to do nothing, which is not what I would advocate for, but, you know.
Well, and adding to that too, it's something for city council to refer to as well. So if someone comes to city council and say, I didn't know about this, they can say, well, the arts committee follows this process as well. So it gives them a tool as well.
So who feels like writing this? I don't, but it just seems like it should be written.
Can I raise a different kind of point? I think this gets to why do we have public art at all? And right now I think we're talking about the art as decoration, and that either gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I think the purpose of public art is to help a community find meaning and conversation with itself in public space. And so in that sense, I think that that conversation and that finding of common meaning is what the public art should be about. And so it shouldn't be that this process is something that's, you know, CYA, we gotta do it, you know, we just gotta get this through because we wanna put this decoration out there. I think that that fostering conversation about what should go there is what public art should be about. And I don't think that, and I think that's very different from kind of choosing art by committee, although that's kind of what we do here. I just think focusing more on what the purpose of the art is, which I think should be about community, should be more of the focus rather than just trying to talk about nobody will always like things. I think that is more true when we are just plunking something down that some people like and some don't, because we're thinking of it as decoration instead of meaning.
I mean, I completely agree with that in the broader picture. That the issue I think everyone comes back to is that in order to achieve that goal, you have to create something that is a tangible physical object and is going to have a particular look. And people are going to respond to the way that it looks regardless of what that look is trying to foster in the end. So inevitably you do kind of come back to appearances. I mean, it's a big part of the message.
But I think that's important, but I think what Susan is driving at is that the art needs to be more about the process and the sentiment or community relations involved behind it and less about the final product. So we have to have some type of compromise where you have a feasible democratic process, but in a wider picture, I think what Susan might be getting at perhaps is also a wider rethinking of the art plan, et cetera, to move from kind of geographic product, in a sense, to having the committee and the wider plan encourage art processes or embedding art as a practice, as a shared experience in what we do. And I think that maybe she may or may not be driving at this, but the permitting process, for lack of a better word, the process behind approval matters to that and is a very important part of that. I think it might not be realistic in a sense to have it idealized as where everyone is in 100% and having these great conversations, but there could be a attempt made perhaps to foreground that type of purchase.
And I think the mural folks who are here, that's part of what they're doing. They're talking to the community. And so I feel like public art should be about place. And if you don't know the place well, and if the artist hasn't talked to the community and hasn't spent time sitting at that spot, talking to people who walk by, then they're not likely to come up with art that's appropriate for that spot.
Although interestingly, in this particular case, this artist lives quite close to the site and spent quite a lot of time on the spot talking to people who go by. So it doesn't always mean that because an art, and I think I think what you're saying is very interesting, and I agree with you. I still think that the process has to embody that, and if the process doesn't, so right now, the process, ideas come to us in a lot of different ways. Somebody can come in like this, community members can come in and say, I really want to do this thing. In this case, the staff came to us and said, we've got some money to spend on this particular site and we want to make something people can climb and play on, and it could be some kind of a sculpture. So that was the impetus for the project. And then there was a panel of community members who met and talked actually in quite a lot of depth about the place and the space and what they might want to have there based on the proposals that they were looking at. I don't know if there's some type of, and then you get, but at the same time you get whatever's turned in to the RFP. So that committee could have said, that panel could have said, we don't like any of these proposals. None of them are what we think should go in that space, but they didn't. Also, that panel can't include the residents, as I just said. That's one of the rules about that panel. So I agree with the sentiment, but at the same time, if it's not embodied in the process in some way, then it doesn't necessarily happen.
You should be on the committee.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We just
No, I actually have some other things that I want to be working on, so I'm sorry, I can't be on this committee.
I tried.
You gave it a shot.
Yeah.
Well done.
Volunteer for somebody else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wonder that about the one of the things the residents asked at the meeting was if there were residents on that on the panel, but there can't be residents on the panel, which is because why?
I mean, I assume it's the same reason that if you live close to a project here, you have to recuse yourself if you're on a committee or commission too, that you have a vested interest
The
that you
design reviews are all like that, right?
Yeah, on
Yeah,
city,
but they're not
any
on a
committee or
committee.
commission.
They're not appointed or serving, they're just citizens. Citizens can
Well, they're
always
approving
come.
a big project, you know. I don't know the exact reason,
They're not
because
approving. If somebody's building a renovation next to your house, you get to come and speak to it.
I don't know.
Well, it's not to say they can't speak to it, but I know that
Oh, you can't be on
we're
it.
not allowed to choose people who could
Can't
vote
be
on the
on
panel who were community members who lived right next to it.
Right,
So,
but it's a good point.
I mean, it certainly, I think that whoever, takes up this notification process could certainly I mean, maybe it is something that you want to be a part of, Susan, to be able to advise on how, because if we don't include it in the process, this idea, if it's not part of the steps that happen to make a project happen, then that conversation doesn't necessarily happen. I mean, it's fine if one committee member feels when a certain project comes before them that there hasn't been enough of that and they want to say no, then of course that person can vote no, but that doesn't make something happen, it only rejects things. It doesn't cause that conversation to happen. So barring that, I'm not sure what in this process where in this process there could be more consultation with the people who live in the space. Because I think that, you know, you can think a lot about the place and the location, as I said, as this artist did, and you can come up with ideas that some people also don't like. So, you know, I don't know. It's a good point, but if it doesn't happen in the process, then how does it happen?
Maybe we should pick the committee members so that you can
I don't-
hash out all those.
Yeah, sure. And I also
questions.
don't think this is going to be, like we said, we've identified 2 or 3 here. I don't know that it has to be a full page. It could be a paragraph. It's really, it shouldn't
Bet
be
it'll be longer than
2 paragraphs. However long you want it to be, Peter.
that. I don't care.
Is there anybody willing to take this on?
I'd be willing to take it on, but only after the sculpture loan program that I'm working on right now is wrapped up. I don't want to put anything in front of that.
I don't know if that's a realistic timeline because the sculpture, I mean, ideally we'd have it before the sculpture loan program, so there's a process in place.
You mean, okay, we have to talk about that.
Anyone want to nominate anyone?
Nobody? Bueller?
Well, I don't know what to do. I mean, this has to happen. There has to be a process that the arts committee
I will. I think I understand what needs to be done, and maybe Susan, can I write
okay.
something up and
Yes,
send it to
yes,
you, and
yes.
Okay, thank you.
then
Lindsay,
maybe
both
we
of
can
you.
draft
Okay.
something up. And
Awesome.
Eve, I need you to give me a deadline because
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
let it slip. I've got plenty of other things to do.
Okay. Does the end of the year sound feasible?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's a long
next
ways
week.
away. Let's see if I
How about
can
before
hurry.
the holidays?
Yeah,
We'll do
all right.
before the holidays. I can give you a date if that would help too.
Okay.
Moving on, item 6.3, BART art program.
Very, very quick,
Handouts.
brief update with the last minute handout. I spoke with the art program manager in July and then again in October, and they've started to get working, I guess, very slowly. And so these are just some bullet points that kind of, I think, highlight for us what might be possible perhaps in a medium or long term. You know, for things like the columns, they're looking for larger scale projects that have some type of narrative or significant sequence or innovative approach. They're very much open. They'll be looking for ad hoc committees probably to work with things like this. Speaking of community engagement, it will be required. They don't have a hard and fast set of rules, but you do need to demonstrate to BART that the community was engaged, consulted, and supports whatever projects that might be forthcoming. They're looking to partner with cities, regional groups, or even other organizations. Unsurprisingly, they do not have specific funding for these types of projects, but Jennifer did say they'd be open to potentially applying for funding together, or they might have funding down the line that might open up. So it could happen, but they don't have it now. Things are presently taking 3 to 6 months to be reviewed. She said that might speed up as they get on track. And permits will be required, which entail insurance often from the artist and or the sponsoring organization. Since these are kind of larger scale projects, you do need to have a professional artist who's going to be able to demonstrate that they have this type of experience and are going to be able to do this. You can see from her email demonstrated engagement in the community. They're looking for someone, organization, the artist, etc., who's going to be responsible for ongoing upkeep. So here they've defaulted, you can see in the language which you sent, they're defaulting to kind of thinking of murals, etc. But in general, if you sign up for this and they approve it, someone is going to have to maintain it for at least 5 years, perhaps longer. It'll be reviewed after 5 years approximately. And again, we're looking for this type of work on the infrastructure, so not the tracks themselves, but the columns, et cetera, not within the stations. So what I mentioned to her, just thinking very broadly, and initially is, we've kicked around ideas about some type of narrative sequence on the columns, or narrative sequences, or something involving sensors and lighting that maybe because the greenway's there, you could track movement or non-movement, et cetera. She said those seemed interesting. They are particularly, I think, interested in larger scale projects, so even if someday we wanted to go beyond Albany, you might be able to partner with El Cerrito or Berkeley, et cetera, and have a wider thing. The feeling I got was that they're very open, they're very interested, there's not funding immediately, and they're kind of feeling this out as well as they go.
Okay, this is good.
Are they expecting to work with a city like the Arts Committee, or are they thinking more in terms of individual artists with?
I think for larger projects, the impression I got, and I believe Isabel's spoken with Jennifer as well, she might have another idea, is that they're looking to at least have cities as partners or interfaces, that maybe they can work with the fine artist, or artists will approach cities, but it seems that the scale is large enough that working with, where they aren't explicitly recruiting artists, which I don't believe is happening yet, cities or regional bodies would be the partner that they're looking for, that might be able to help manage the process and work with it.
And no one ever has to pay BART for the use of their property per se, but
I don't believe so, aside from permitting fees or et cetera.
I think this sounds really exciting, and I especially like the idea of projections, because there's so much interesting work going on with sensors and projections right now. For example, Greg Niemeyer, who teaches at Berkeley, did a really interesting project with our students, and San Leandro, with sensors. And you can have art that responds to everything from air quality to the speed of the bikes going by, that can respond to people touching things. And then the art is less permanent, and then if somebody doesn't like it, then it's not there forever. And also it's just a chance, as compared to a mural, there's just a chance for so much more creativity, because it can be changing all the time. So
the one concern I had in mentioning this type of work, and I don't think it would be a significant concern, is that obviously as long as it's not going to interfere with the operation of the trains, the tracks, et cetera, which I don't imagine would be a significant obstacle to something like this.
The narrative idea is really interesting too. There's a nonprofit here that's called Chapter 510. There's a lot of them. They're all called Chapter this and Chapter that, and they're offsprings, I think, of the Valencia Street Project, David Egger's project with youth writers, and they do all kinds of fantastic, publication of young people's writing. And I don't know, I just love the idea of something narrative, or it doesn't have to be literally a word narrative either. The sensor idea would be interesting if there's a way to, just because they do repeat, as you go along.
You could ideally, depending on what comes out or what comes to fruition, you have scope for two narratives, right? Going one way and going another, potentially, so there's also interaction.
That's cool. Great, thanks for doing that.
yeah, thank you.
So I left her and said, we'll think about it and we'll get back if you have ideas, and please, vice versa, let us know.
So BART has a specific art committee that they've set up now?
I think what I understood, Jennifer's the manager, and I think what she means by ad hoc committees, that if Albany tomorrow were to propose Project X, she'd put together a review committee that involves BART people, but also likely experts in field X, or whoever might have the relevant expertise or geographic pertinence, etc. I don't think there's a full standing long-term, let's say, arts committee. I think it's Jennifer, the manager, serving with
She's a manager
select
of
people.
what?
The art program.
Oh,
So
the art
there's a
program.
standing art program
Okay.
with different charges, let's say, including art in the station, cataloging BART's existing art, improving the experience of the trains, but also these kind of potential infrastructure projects.
It's great information. It's wonderful.
Are there any action items, or just?
I would say, I think realistically, it seems we have a lot going on right now. We move all things considered fairly slowly, I think, covering X, Y, and Z. So I think maybe it's something we could keep in mind, and as we're developing plans for the next work plans, this could be a medium to long-term idea. It would be a significant project, and this I think particularly because it's so visible, would be something that you really would want community involvement, or at least say in some, that's not the right word, but.
It's like a big Albany community artist
Yeah.
project.
Do they have a timeline?
No,
Goals?
I mean, I think the impression I got is that they're feeling this out, and so they're learning as they do it. I think so far they've done fairly small projects, some mural-based projects, but I think they'd be excited to do more.
I think it might just be something to flag for future discussions of the Arts Master Plan, that collaboration with other agencies and especially infrastructure is something that should be part of the master plan.
Okay, item 6.4, Jenny and Peter are going to update us on the sculpture loan program.
Well, I've talked to all the different artists, and the plan was, I don't know how to proceed. I don't know how to proceed because I have sort of walked it a whole bunch and got a vision and talked to the artists and figure out what I would do. But I need the Public Works Department to do some of it for me. And now I don't know if I have to ask all the neighbors. So I'm a little bit, here's how I'm feeling. I feel like I know what we should do. And I feel like my thing is really cost effective. And we don't need concrete pads for some of the art. But I also feel kind of pressure having represented the city with these artists and saying, yeah, we really want to do this. And then everything seems to stop and slow down. And I don't know how to move it forward. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what to do to move it forward. And I don't know whether the committee wants me to float all my ideas in front of the committee and we decide by committee, or whether it's just something that I take on like the foyer, or, I don't know what the process is for doing the sculpture ones.
I can speak to the notification process. You would not have to do any of that. The city does all of the notification
But
process.
do we want to have a notification process for the sculpture ones?
That's a committee decision.
And it's a decision that would impact my ongoing relationship with these artists. I would have to come back to them and say, no, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. Because we're gonna do a notification process. And that's not a reason not to do it. But I'm just saying that I'm the person who's doing that.
Yeah.
Again, because, I said this before, I'll say it again, because these are not permanent pieces, I'm of the impression in my mind, it's going to be there a couple of years, 2 to 3 years tops, unless there is this outpouring of we love it, we want to keep it, we're going to buy it kind of thing, which would obviously involve the community that lives right around it. I don't see why, we need to have notification on these particular pieces because they're not going to be there that long.
But are the locations themselves going to be there for an ongoing, determined period of time?
Yeah.
I believe that isn't that what we have?
Well, that's what I'm talking. That's what one of them has a possible conflict because it's on that thing called the Rotary Road, and that's where I want to put a concrete pad because the 2 columns that want to go there need to be set in concrete. The other places, one doesn't need a concrete pad, and the circle around Dartmouth, and just needs, the artist would say he did a concrete pad. You don't need to know my whole process, but I figured out what I think we should do. I just don't know how to do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being very articulate about it, but I have ideas.
Well, if you want to move ahead, you have to, certain things Public Works, you'd have to talk to them. So you want to know, is it okay to approach them?
That's what I want to know, and I feel like everything has to go through Eva.
Then it's kind of stuck, right?
So I have to go through Eva to do anything, and I just want to know if it's okay with the committee if I move forward with that.
So the one thing we had talked about is that the circular column, everyone knows where that goes.
Yeah.
I think a concrete pad would be great. We've budgeted some money to that. And if we're going to do a concrete pad, Public Works can do it. They just need to know the size. And that was one thing I thought maybe the committee could decide how big it is. We can make it just for this piece, but we have to think long term, 10, 15, 30 years down the road. What's a concrete pad look like that's going to be, versatile? for
Well, that's
different
the discussion that I had a lot in my own mind as I walked along those different things. And I think we should let him do a specific concrete pad for that installation and then use all the different materials that are already at play in the Albany Greenway to create a setting for that particular piece. That either chips or decomposed granite or, you know, those kind of fountain grasses that are over by the place outside of the senior center. You know, there's the thing that I really want to avoid as I walk the path is like, oh, popcorn of sculpture here, oh, event here, and having it be very scattershot. Like, oh, we just plop something down. And I wanted to create like a kind of a hardscape theme so that it's in harmony with the rest of the path. And that would mean using either like the cedar chips that are in the senior thing or the decomposed granite that goes all along the path, or using native plants growing around it. And those things are fairly transitory and fairly cheap compared to a perimeter concrete pad, one of those really structural pads that can take a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I think that we would need Public Works to do would be to level two sites, fairly level, and then help. They wouldn't even have to, if we did cedar chips, which would be the cheapest thing possible to do, they wouldn't even have to distribute them. We could just buy them from our budget and put them around it. And then we would create a setting for each one of these pieces that made it feel more intentional than just, here they are. Peter and I, when we picked the sites, we wanted it to feel like you were coming across something. You know, there's a grove of trees, and oh, there's this beautiful sculpture you can sit on. But there's a grove of trees, and now there's more metal trees. You know what I mean? We really thought about what would it be like to come across these things, and I think less concrete is better, to tell you the truth.
Literally
Less,
concrete.
less, yeah.
Yes.
I went from like filling that whole circle with concrete to let's not do that, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But I don't, so is this making sense to everybody? Am I being coherent? Okay, great.
It is, but I need specifics on what information you are missing so that I can go and find out.
I have a
about
whole
it.
list I could send you.
Yeah, that would be
Yes,
great.
but I
And
need-
if you could break it down per site.
I can.
And then for the concrete pad, we want to get away from the artist making anything permanent for the city. If he was going to make a concrete pad and be able to take it away, which in Orinda they do sometimes, they make temporary pads.
I can ask him.
That would be okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, again, that's a pretty amazing spot for a sculpture. So I just want to put some thought into it of if it is going to be permanent, what the committee feels like is appropriate, or if you and Peter want to decide. Or
Right, well, the thing, that one site is so geometric.
I'm sorry, can we just identify where the sites are?
Sure,
In my
that
mind,
site,
I'm not clear.
you probably will bike past it all the times, Dartmouth and the Albany Greenway. So there was
So
a
the
tree.
round one.
Yeah,
The round
Got
one,
it.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So, you know, it can look like a bullseye, or it can look, it can look really stupid if you don't do it right. And so what I thought, well, this is going to be a column that we've assigned, a very large column. And it does need to be bolted into something because kids are going to try to climb it, maybe. You know what I mean? So that was a site that I thought shouldn't be. I thought for a while we should just fill that whole circle in with concrete and have it be something, But then I thought that's kind of silly looking. Then it really looks like a dartboard. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't look like the rest of the.
You just want to have it bolted in the dirt. That's what the artist said he could do.
Yeah, he said he could bolt it in the dirt, or he can put a temporary concrete pad in and bolt it in the pad. I said I wanted something, when I talked to him, I said I wanted something that if a high school kid was trying to climb it, it wouldn't topple over. He said it would never topple over, no matter what he did. But the site would have to be, exactly where the column sat would have to be level.
mm-hmm.
It's got a little kind of rise on it right now.
Sure.
So I was thinking about our budget, and I thought if we just level that, he bolts it down, and then we fill it with chips and native grasses, then we've created, or that decomposed granite, we've created a special harmonious site as opposed to this concrete circle.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thinking, and that site is flexible. If we get to another sculpture that's bigger, it's not a concrete pad, it's something that we can, do you know what I'm saying?
What do you bolt it to if there's no concrete?
I don't know, that's why I wanted him to make a
I
pad.
think they put pieces of metal down into the ground actually.
Mhm.
They can
3,
put metal
4
like
feet.
way down, like a big spike that you can attach
Right.
sculptures to. That, like, you see them when they're sitting and they look like they're just sitting on the grass. I think most of those
It's like
have
rebar.
anchors that go down into the ground.
Yeah. I'm just concerned that anything that has landscaping will not get maintained and it'll end up looking scruffy. And that with cedar chips, that kids will move them away.
Well, I've been
And dogs
watching
will
that
dig it
senior
up.
center spout, you know, the exercise place outside the senior center.
The log scramble.
Soups looks great, always. And I don't know if anybody maintains that. It always looks fantastic. It's just fountain grasses, low-lying, so you know this, cedar chips and gravel.
That's still pretty new though, right?
It is.
It
Almost a
is pretty
year old.
new, but,
Yeah, well, a year is not.
and then the
Sounds
decomposed
different.
granite, who does maintain those paths, those running paths along the BART?
Nobody? I mean,
Nobody.
if there was a problem,
Yeah,
or, yes,
would the city do it?
yes, I believe so. It's a tricky one, but I
See-
believe the city does,
See,
yeah.
because all of those things are very low maintenance settings that I think would be, I mean, I just think they'd be much more attractive than a piece of concrete.
Are we up against a deadline as far as when this has to be done and the money has to be spent?
So this PAPP goes through June 2019, so ideally that would be, you know.
We have until then. I thought there was something having to do with the money that was coming in.
Right.
Not for
In
this
January.
one.
Not for this one.
This isn't getting matched.
This is not.
Right.
This is just
That
a
was the
small amount of
pre-vote.
money that we allocated out of
Right.
our fund
Okay.
for.
That being said, if you needed an extension, I feel like that's a very minor ask to ask council
So-
to put it in the next BAPP.
Well, for each of these sites, there's likely some kind of landscaping or cleanup or something that has to be done. Is it enough for the committee to basically say, well, we trust your judgment on this, just come up with a good solution and let's
Work
move
with
ahead and
Public
get
Works.
it done?
Yeah,
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 Yes,
I think so.
Because
absolutely.
that's what
that's
you
what
would
I'm
like,
asking,
right?
that's what I'd like to do,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do we
Yes,
need
I would just ask, just given the experience with so many of these public art projects that required some landscaping maintenance, that, you know, whether it's the Albany sign with the grass or the thing that was in Memorial Park, I would be very cautious about assuming, I mean, DG is not really low maintenance, it needs to be maintained.
But we just talked about who maintains it along the BART path,
Is it realistic to have
you know?
new paddings and settings for each sculpture that are gonna come through?
Well,
New
here's
concrete pads?
No, well, it
Yeah.
seems like we have two choices, and I don't
Yeah.
we really have the luxury of these choices. One is like a more long-term, do a concrete pad, it's gonna look okay sometimes, sometimes not. For some art it will work, some it won't, but it's there, it's permanent. Or have more art-specific padding, for lack of a better word. And I'm wondering, is the art-specific padding, I think obviously in a perfect world it's more desirable, but is it feasible going forward? Is there gonna be the funding, the staffing, the ability to tailor the sites to the art every, what is it, 2 years?
Well, let me interject real quick. When I talked to, and I don't know if I've given you that contact information of the person who does the sculpture loan program in Orinda, he's bolted down art in 800 different ways. It's super creative. He also says less concrete is better, but sometimes you have to do it. He picks the art for the location. So if we did a 6-foot diameter concrete pad in this circle, then you would go and look for art that
Fits
fit
that
that.
pad.
Whereas opposed to how we did it our first time is said,
Yeah.
you know, anyone want to donate their art to us?
Yeah.
And now we're finding locations for it, which is not a bad way to do it. It's just a different way. But he really recommended that they're very intentional when they go to an artist and say, here's the location, we've checked out your art, we really want it, you know, something tall and, you know, and it will fit perfectly in this spot. We already know what goes well in this spot. They also have it, you know, bolted into concrete. They do those 3 to 4 foot long steel rods most often. There's no, he said I can't think of any substrate that we couldn't bolt a statue into, or sculpture. So yeah, anyway, so I don't know
Yeah,
if
so
that,
give me his info, or, you know, I would love to
you
talk
guys
to
will
him.
talk for like 4 hours, I know. You'll
Great,
pick his
because
brain.
he's way into it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he's way into it, and
Yeah.
he's great information. He has a lot of experience, and but I feel like you've had that conversation with the artist already, so that's great.
Yeah.
So if you and I, if you can just email me that based on the location, then we can work of what needs to go to Public Works, what answers do you need, and we can
Great,
move forward on
great,
those.
because I know, I have all the dimensions, I know all what should happen in
Okay.
every spot. I'm just not sure how to go, but now you just told me.
Well, and Public Works is gonna think of things that we don't think of,
That's
you
right.
know, so they're gonna, and what's feasible where, so we have to be prepared with, okay, here's the sculpture, here's the site, we're hoping to level, you know, a proposal
Right, okay,
essentially,
great.
and then
Great,
they'll think of everything else.
I can get that to you by the end of the week,
Okay.
because I've already got the rough, so I'll just make it more specific.
Okay, great,
I
great,
just wanted
thank
to-
you for all your work,
Thank
Jenny.
you very much, Jenny. I just want to comment that I've been thinking also, I agree with Cheryl. I don't really think that this falls into the category of people needing to receive special notification, but I'm interested what other people think. It's temporary. The city is borrowing something and putting it on their land, and it doesn't seem to me like it's something that people need to have a period of time to really comment on specifically. There's very little public money being spent even on installing these pieces, and there's no public money being spent on acquiring them because we're not acquiring them. So
Right,
it's
good points.
my feeling that we would not need a notification process for these sculptures, but I'm interested if anybody disagrees with that.
I think we're farther along enough in this process that for now we should just try to get them out there as soon as we can, but for the next round, perhaps, I think because it is public land, it'd be beneficial to at least just have the announcement saying these sites will have rotating sculpture on them
Mm-hmm.
going forward.
And we can even do
And,
that,
you know, welcome
you
your
know, we can
comments, et
print up
cetera.
Peter's really good at making signs that you can stick in the ground.
It could
We
be a
can-
haiku.
We can make just a simple sign that says just
I mean, there's
something
no
like
reason
that.
really not to do that. Actually,
Sure.
even from a PR standpoint, you could put
Right.
the signs in the ground now and say there's sculpture loan something coming here
Yeah.
or whatever, you know, then
Just
people
wait.
will
Stay
know.
tuned.
Stay tuned.
But I don't think, I guess my point is I don't think every single piece needs to be reviewed by the community when it's a temporary loan, and if it really was a problem, the community could say, you absolutely have to give this back to the artist, and the city could just do that. You wouldn't have the same problem that you do with a piece that the city owns.
Right,
Sure.
okay, cool, thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, foyer gallery update.
Okay. Jenny, bless her wonderful heart, took care of the last opening since I was out of town. If you haven't been over to see, you can actually go on your foyer since we're here and take a look. The show is terrific. It is a remarkable blend of her prints and the banners and information, and it's very different from anything that we have ever done. And I am totally amazed at how well it worked. I had my doubts about it, but I think it's just a really interesting and a terrific show, and I'm very pleased. And from what Jenny said, Dawn was very pleased, and so it looks great. I also contacted Aura, who is our quilt person, for the very last show we're doing next year, and said there are banners hung and you might want to come and take a look and see how she did this. And so maybe this could give you some ideas. She was delighted to hear about that and said she'd come back.
Great.
So hopefully she will do that and see it before it comes down. And Jenny, the opening was very nice.
Yeah, we were there.
It was good, there was mochi, it was yummy.
It was mochi.
There was mochi.
Perfect.
I missed the mochi.
Yeah.
Oh,
Missed the
well.
mochi. It was super sweet.
That's great. And thank you once again. I'm sorry.
But the social history of this project is something that is really different from anything we've ever had in the foyer. And I thought that that was really amazing. And the fact that you probably wouldn't buy one of her panels, you know what I mean? It's not like art to acquire, but was wonderful. It's real wonderful.
So take
Lovely
some,
sense of connection to
Yeah.
the community.
it just to take it, if you haven't really spent any time there, it is really quite an impressive show. Our next show is Julia James, and she is the photographer. And her show goes up January 12th is her opening day, and the reception is January 13th. Sorry, January 13th. I just read my writing. Peter will have her postcard done. It is done.
It is, I should have had it today, but I'll have them tomorrow, and I'll drop them off at the community center.
So that's great. So we are set to go. I don't think I have any other announcements.
Alright. Peter, update on the fall into haiku.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
Do we get up to get up and walk?
well, you know, the as you may recall, some of the haiku go on these kind of yard signs. There's 50 of them, and then there's 43 that are on these 11 by 17 panels. These go in the big belly trash compactors on the sides, and they range up and down San Pablo Avenue. So thanks, Eva, we got all these laminated. I hope they fit.
I think they do.
They did last year.
Yeah.
Anyway, so got a pretty good turnout. We're supposed to put them in sometime this weekend. I think if the air is still bad, I might bail off on that.
Yeah.
And wait until, because we got to be outside the whole time.
Did you solve your problem about how hard it was to get the signs into the ground last year?
Yeah, it's depending on. You think that those areas around the trees, since they're very well irrigated, would be soft, but they're not. Some of them are really like concrete.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the stakes into them without bending them. And sometimes you hit, and they're roots, because they're trees, and there's a lot of roots down there. So sometimes you gotta kind of move around and try and find a place where you can get in. Yeah, it's not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes right in. And as I said, I don't think we're going to do much in San Pablo because it's just terrible. I think we can go further down Solano, up into some of the neighborhoods there, and maybe down Adams Street a little bit. You know.
And you do around the schools,
Albany Hill Walk.
right? Do you do around the schools?
Yeah, you know, actually we could probably go have a couple around Marin and Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're not supposed to put them on school property, so we have to be kind of careful about that. And the parking strips is okay, I think. Anyway, we'll find enough room, and then there's a map that'll be up on the internet that everyone will be able to access, and it'll have every one of the poems has a number, and you'll be able to look at the number on a little flag on the Google map, and then you click on it, it'll open up and you can read the haiku that's there. And there should be a key to the left. That's the way it worked last year.
Yeah, it was a great addition.
I'm trying to remember exactly how I did it last year. Forget it so quickly. Anyway, that's happening, and they'll be up probably till mid-December, just before Christmas.
Great.
An update on Film Fest?
Film Fest going along, fundraising. Got about 70 or 80 films, I think, that have been submitted. Again, it's going to be at the Albany Twin the end of March. And there will be 3 nights in the week preceding. There will be feature-length films at the Albany Twin. With some, they're like program films. I think there's going to be a night of women directors. And then there's going to be the kids show in the weekend before here at the community center. Right now it's mostly just figuring out the details, pricing, and making arrangements for the gala, which I believe is going to be at the Mechanics Bank again. We're all going to get invites. It's a fun night. So that's where we are with that.
It's in the winter spring activity guide. There's a full page layout there too.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Which comes out first week of December.
And they have the dates in there, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's been set.
And some of the details, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. Future agenda items. I would like to make sure, Eva, that we do get onto the next agenda to have a conversation about how the art and the APP fund can be expended under the ordinance, and if we need the city attorney to clarify that for us. I know you said that he can't always make it to our meetings,
Yeah.
but maybe you can email back and forth with me about us getting some specific guidance about what the ordinance says and how public art gets defined under the ordinance. Because I think the question that the committee has is not so much what does city council expect us to do, but what do we think we should be doing, and do we want to propose to do it somehow differently, and what does that mean? Does the ordinance actually limit us, or is it defined in the master plan and we could amend the master plan if we wanted to propose that to the council?
Can the ordinance be
Well,
amended? in
But
some
does it,
way?
but that's, yeah, does it even need to be? We just need to clarify these things. So however that needs to be written, like a discussion of how APP funds can be spent and how the ordinance and the master plan interact to guide us in doing that, something like that. And I think we need information, but I think people also want to discuss, because it's true, there are questions about, we do spend some of that money on temporary things, so what exactly is guiding us in this, I think is important for us to discuss.
Really important.
What else do we need to have on the agenda next month?
And just under that same question about the ordinance, one specific question is, can the funds be used as a matching grant for grant applications?
Oh, that's a
That-
really good question.
That I've been told no, because the committee, although they have a public art fund, they're not in the business of doing grants. So none of the committees or commissions would be able to do that. But have you talked to, I'm assuming it's for Love the Bulb? But
Well, no,
an
it's more,
example.
it's actually much more general than that.
Okay.
So, I mean, just in terms of what I would like to have on the agenda, I'd like to get to one specific thing about Love the Bulb that I would like to put on the agenda, but I think a much more important issue is more generally that if the city wants to apply for grants that could be quite large, I mean, multi-$100,000 grants, there needs to be some source of matching funds. And that would be a really excellent way to leverage funds generated by development projects, and that, you know, and we can either spend $50,000 on a statue, or we could spend $50,000 and get $100,000 or $150,000. And I think that it's really important to identify why we wouldn't want to do that. And from what you're saying, that can't be done, but it seems.
For the arts committee, not the city. The city itself, I don't know, and Jeff would be a better resource for that, but for the arts committee,
But in the case of measure of the Albany Greenway, we are in a matching situation with the WW money.
that's a city project. I think you're talking about an outside organization applying for the city to do a matching
Not
grant.
necessarily for the city to be party to applying for a grant, I think is what Susan is talking about.
Or
With
the
an
city
outside
could be,
organization?
or the city could be the applicant. So a lot of these grants, either the city is the applicant in collaboration with a nonprofit or some other organization or a school district, or the nonprofit is the applicant in partnership with the city. In either case, it's crucial that matching funds be available.
Are you talking about WW funds from the ballot measure, or?
Well, we matched something. We were always talking about how that half of it was coming from WW and half of it was coming from us.
The arts fund, right. So that was a ballot measure that passed. There was certain allocated to the city of Albany based on its population and for X, Y, and Z.
So it wasn't a match, it was just.
Yeah, it was a lump sum that was given to each city, and then the city council decided how it would be allocated
Right.
to. So a little bit different, but
Yeah, I think, I mean, to me, it seems like there's a larger question about grant. We had a conversation with the committee about grants and creative placemaking and the grants support that could be available for that. There doesn't seem to be any kind of, matching funds for a grant just means that the city is expending money on the project and the same project that the funder is expending money on. It doesn't necessarily mean that the city that is an outside agency or isn't an outside agency. It has more to do with if the city is applying for grant funds.
right.
Other cities do this, right? So
Yes.
it's gotta be
It's a
something
thing that
that can be
cities do.
replicated or
Yeah.
copied or.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's like federal grants, like from the NEA,
Right.
that cities can apply for,
Mhm.
along
Urban
with
development
a
grants.
nonprofit, where there's a partnership there, and so you get, that's how a project gets funded on both federal and city level.
But I think the larger question, actually, Susan, to me, it seems like the question really still comes down to what can we spend that money on? Because at the end of the day, it's less likely that the city would say, or that we would even propose, like, let's give X amount of money as a grant matching fund. It's more likely that we would say, hey, there's this project, and this project is something happening in Albany that's really great from an arts perspective, and we, the Arts Committee, want to suggest that the city put X amount of dollars into that. Well, that becomes potentially a match for funds that are coming from the outside. We don't have to say, you don't necessarily do it to match the fund. You do it to you could then say to a funder, we're putting this money into the project, and if you put this money in, there'll be twice as much money. So it still becomes a question of what could this committee approve that funding for. If, for example, we wanted to build a sculpture, it seems pretty clear to me that if the city were to say, hey, we want to apply for a grant to build this sculpture, say there's a sculpture grant program out there, if the Arts Committee put in said we recommend $20,000 towards this, and City Council said yes, that's a good expenditure, the city could then tell a funder, well, we've got 20,000 and we're looking for 20,000 more, and our input to that project becomes a grant match, but that doesn't mean that we're just doing what we do, which is put money into the project that we want to support. So I think the bigger question for me remains, what kind of projects can we support?
Which speaks to your first point.
Right.
I
mean, we need to know that before we would ever be able to know if we could match a grant or not, because clearly if we were discussing matching a sculpture grant, I feel like we probably could. If the city wanted to pursue a sculpture grant, this committee could say whether or not we thought that was, and they would ask us. The City Council would ask the Arts Committee, I don't know, should we put $20,000 from the APP fund in towards this? So I do think it's that conversation, they're related.
But there's, I think, a question of timing and process, because there might be a project where the actual object is not known, but it's a program of installing sculptures that are intended to foster community conversation or something. And in order to apply to even move forward with that, we would need to be able to say we can assign in advance that we'll set aside this money and we're not going to spend it on a sculpture to install, next spring, but we're going to set it aside, and because the whole grant application process will take a while, and you have to set it aside while you're doing the application for the grant. So I think that it would, at our next meeting, it would be good to talk about this. One, what can we use the funds for? And do we want to make a recommendation to the City Council that if your interpretation is that their intention was for it to be only visual art, that we would like to have the opportunity to discuss whether we want to make a different recommendation. And I would really discourage the use of the word events. We're talking about performance, and if that's something very different from an event.
Is there a specific reason? Is there some reason why we shouldn't use the word events?
Event is not an artwork.
Yeah, I guess it was defined as a one-time. Yeah, we don't.
A one-time
semantics.
performance.
We should discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah. So, but I would like to add, so the specific thing, so the general discussion, I think Jen has identified of what we can use the grants for, what we can use the APP fund for. And specifically, and I raised this not as a committee member, and you can tell me the proper way to do this, but as a citizen who wants to bring forward a project, Love the Bulb would like to apply for a California Arts Council grant with an application deadline of January 9th. And that requires a letter from the city, partnership letter. Ideally, that would include some funding, but there's obviously not time to get any kind of approval for that. And so there is a December 17th City Council meeting. That is where the city would be able to approve the letter for the city to, so that the city could be a partner in this. And so that's why I would like to put that specific item on the agenda for December. And I think that this raises a larger issue, which I think relates to the point that Jen raised, which is, what is our advisory role? And part of the reason that that I'm up against this deadline right now is that I thought, based on what Jen had said at a meeting, that, you know, we didn't need, you know, the approval by the Arts Committee for the city to apply for grants. And then it turns out, you know, talking with Jeff Bond, that yes, it's needed. And so now, you know, so I think that we didn't take, when I gave a presentation on these grant opportunities in June, we didn't have a motion, we didn't say, we recommend to the city council that, you know, that the city proactively pursue placemaking grant opportunities. And I think that that is something we should discuss. Do we want to make that recommendation? And I think it's also important to kind of keep in mind moving forward that whether it's that specific issue or not, that our advisory role needs to be kind of laid out in a timely manner so that when opportunities arise, that city staff can respond because they've already had some guidance. And although the final decision is by city council, that if city council also has that guidance in a timely way, you know, long in advance of a specific question or a specific grant, that would be useful. So.
To quickly speak to the December 17th, was it? To get on that agenda, you have to have it 2 or 3 weeks before and put it in writing. So I would recommend to continue to work with Jeff on that, since our meeting is after that. If that's something, a goal of yours to get onto their agenda. Okay. So I just don't want you to miss that.
Yeah.
But I think you may need to put it on our agenda. We're talking about, I think now specifically not about money, but about a letter of support for this project, that we may need to have it on our agenda whether or not we support that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in advance.
No, I mean, if the city is, I mean, I think it could be helpful, but I think because you've already been working with Jeff, I think
Jeff says it's necessary. It's not helpful, it's necessary.
He said it's necessary for the Arts Committee to
make a recommendation for the city council, and that it is necessary for the city council to approve the application for this grant.
Oh, was a different discussion than I had with him. So I'll clarify with
and
them.
so if I misunderstood, that would be great. But that's what I understood today, so maybe you can chat with Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that timeline work then?
So I would request that this item be put on the city council agenda, like now, as soon as possible, that it be put on the December 17th agenda, and we also put it on the Arts Committee December 7th agenda. And then if the Arts Committee says yes, then that advice goes to city council, and then city council can vote on the 17th.
The timeline's not adding up in this,
It
given
adds
that
up.
we
This-
meet afterwards.
No, we meet before them. We meet
To get on the agenda.
We wouldn't be able to meet before Susan asked to have the item on the agenda. So the question is, if Jeff is saying that the city council won't approve this without the Arts Committee discussing it, that you get on both agendas, put the question to us, and Susan would recuse herself from that conversation, and then put the question to them, saying what the Arts Committee said. What could happen is this committee could vote no, and you'd be on the city council's agenda, and they would get the advice that the Arts Committee doesn't support this, but it would still be on their agenda. But you know, that's a possibility that could happen.
Yeah.
Okay, I will get
And
more
then they would know
information.
that when they were discussing it.
Anything else?
I'm wondering, and I don't want to overstuff the next meeting, but I think it would be good maybe to put on the January meeting. Is the economic, the subcommittee that's meeting with the economic committee, are you guys still?
So we're stalled, and this is my responsibility. I owe a draft of language to send out to businesses promoting, kind of signifying, we think art is great, this is what you could do, here's some options, etc. I think for December it'd be unrealistic. I would love to surprise you for December with that. January might be a little more realistic.
I just wondered, I think it would be a great thing to have. I think there are a couple of things that might be nice if folks think it's appropriate to have as standing items, just like we have the haiku and we have Albany Film Fest as items on every single agenda. To have something about kind of economic development and placemaking, that nexus, I think, is something that it would be nice to have on the agenda, so we can just So talk about it when opportunities arise, because it's the kind of thing that if we don't have it on the agenda and we can't talk about it, then we may miss grant opportunities. And secondly, it would also be nice if we could have the bulb as a standing item if people want it, because it'd be nice to be able to give updates in the way we give updates on other things.
Mm-hmm. Where the bulk gets tricky is that it's not on our work plan. So I'm not
But it
sure.
was in our work plan.
It's very vague, and I can.
The vague, I mean, I think you're just talking about an update, right?
More than just the updates that you give in the beginning of the
You
meeting.
can always give an update in the beginning of the meeting. It's always there.
Yeah, but
What does our work plan say about it?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
But then I can't do anything more than announce. So like for Albany Film Fest, we usually just have updates, but we could also discuss it.
True.
And so it's better if it's something that's kind of an ongoing thing to have it as an agenda item so we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Consult with stakeholders, planners, and the public on how art and art activities can be integrated into the bulb. So the consult is kind of the action word there. Where I'm not exactly sure, and Susan and I have talked about this before, is I just want to be careful not to cross any lines just because you are involved with an organization that does love the bulb. But that being said, this is the perfect opportunity to talk about your programs here. But so that's my only hesitation, I guess. I don't know, explain that.
And I guess the distinction with the Albany Film Fest is that the Film Fest is a city program.
Right. Yeah, all of these are great city programs. Any other thoughts?
I was talking to our mayor about ways to support the arts, and she was looking for counsel. She was looking for really good ideas. And so I wondered if we could, I mean, this would be the reason to put these things on the agenda for the city council. It's like one way is that the city could become a co-funder, as you're saying, applying for grants for the city as a stakeholder, but also a way to involve community organizations like Susan's organization or like Blue Bear or like the other arts committee, give them more status. We make them like a semi-official status, something, give them some stature so that the city knows we're, this is really incoherent. Make a space for them so that they can be part of the discussion on the level of the city, so they're not outsider groups, but that they're insider groups because they happen in Albany. So we don't really have a way to integrate local nonprofits or local art-making organizations, and I think we should find a way.
I guess I would propose that we do have a few processes where outside organizations or community members can propose art. Maybe there's a new process that we haven't thought of, and that.
Well, I guess because with Susan saying the bulb, we know the bulb's not really on our plan as a discussion item, because it's not a city project. So yes, the city's not giving any money to it. So, but does the Economic Development Committee want to create an umbrella because we think it's an important part of the arts? If the arts are truly important for economic development, there should be a space. Is this making sense? There should be an official space for discussion.
I mean, I think lots of different offices and people in the city have their eye on the bulb and are aware of what's happening. And I think it'd be great to have regular updates as to what's happening to the bulb.
I don't have a problem.
Let me just finish. And if there is an action item, you probably know what it is, and at that point, like a week before the meeting, you'd be able to let Jan and Eva know, and then we could agendize it as an item, because then there's something to do. But I think it's good for us to be apprised of what's happening. That is part of our. It's something that we would like to know as a committee.
Help promote.
And eventually, I'm sure there's going to be something that we're going to have to be involved with, and it would make our decision making later on down the line that much easier. But we don't necessarily have to have it as an action item each time if there's nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
So you're advocating for having it?
I'm advocating for having, for Susan feeling that if she wants, every month, she can give us an update on what's happening.
Mhm.
And if there is something that we have to decide on that particular month, that she would know that in advance and just put it on the agenda so that we can take action.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's enough in our work plan that having an information-only agenda item on a monthly basis is not a problem. You know, it says consult with people making art at the Bulb. It's a place that a lot of stuff is happening right now in the arts, and that's cool, and we should be knowing about that. So I don't have a problem with that. It seems like and I don't want to put it on December, but it seems like we're going to need to have an agenda item coming up even on partnerships with other organizations and grant making, but I don't know that December is the month to talk about it.
Mhm.
Because you and I will have to look at the agenda and see how much is already on
Yeah,
there.
that'd be great. That'd be great to hear your feedback.
Okay.
But just, how about the economic development and the arts standing item? Would that be a useful standing item?
Well, I go back to what I say, if there's something we actually have to do, then it makes sense to have it as a agenda item. If not, then just in the beginning of the meeting, just to say this happened.
I should also mention that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you, Peter, you are on the Film Fest subcommittee and the
Yes.
haiku subcommittee. So
Yes.
these are all subcommittees as well. You're on the subcommittee
Yeah.
as well. So the sculpture loan is a subcommittee, and then these other ones were proposed. So that's why we do have those 4 standing items as well.
I see, and what is a subcommittee, there's a status to something being a subcommittee, or does that have some
Got
legal meaning, or?
Nominated by the committee to be I don't know what the word is, the
Representatives
go-between,
of the
a representative.
And there
And not-
can't be more than 2 of us on the subcommittee.
There can't be more than
There's
3.
a Brown Act thing
Yeah.
that kicks in.
Yeah.
And it's so that we can do committee business outside of the committee without
Right.
violating the Brown Act.
Right. And they are responsible for representing the city or the arts committee, but also coming back to the committee with any questions, and that's why they've been on there.
So if we wanted to form like a subcommittee to explore art on the Bulb, we could do that.
I think so. I would have to double check,
I'm
but
not advocating that necessarily, but it is something we could do.
Well, we could do whatever
But it has to be on the
whatever
work
Ina just read us. It is on our work plan to consult with people making
Right.
art on the Bulb or something like that.
So we could have a subcommittee, a consultation subcommittee.
I think so. I would have to double check. I'm getting technical.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's come back to that for now, and I will find out more information too.
Okay.
Other items for future agenda items?
I'll have a report on the haiku and the film fest.
Cool.
Not for a specific December or January, but would there be any interest in the long term in having like an arts committee open house or invite members of the community to like, each December, we invite the local gallery owners, Blue Bear, et cetera, Love the Bulb, et cetera, like on a regular, this is the meeting for everyone to come and tell us how can we help you, what are you seeing, what are the trends, something like that. That this isn't for December or January, but just thinking of the calendar
It's an
annually.
interesting idea.
What's a good month for doing that? What's a light month?
I feel like January through April, we're working on the work plan
It
and
gets really,
PAPP.
those meetings get really long.
Uh-huh. Not every year. I mean, it's every 2 years, but still being mindful of that. So
We
maybe
could
it's
also
a
have a
May.
special meeting of the arts committee sometime, which is just, for artists sitting
Yeah, sure, that's a good
once a
idea.
year to do that.
And invites, but
A
send out an
party.
invitation. A party.
Right.
Why don't we have more parties?
Good idea.
Sure, good idea.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, we're out.
So this
And
video,
next
we
week-
can watch the link, right?
Yes, yes. Next week we will be, and for the foreseeable future, 7 o'clock, Monday nights at the City Hall.
Wait a minute.